Hello, welcome back to Dungeons and Dragons Basics from Dice to Roleplay. Today we're going to be talking about something a little different, which is stats. This game is ultimately a game driven by your statistics and the roll of dice, and so knowing your statistics and what those mean is important. So let's get started knowing what all the stats of D&D are. First of all, there are 6 stats in Dungeons & Dragons that determine your ability modifiers, and having a score above 10 is considered good. Strength, Dexterity, Charisma, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Constitution are all tied to your ability scores and aid or deter your actions in-game. For example, need to jump from one platform to another? That would be harder with low strength and dexterity scores. So these scores are going to give your character the opportunity to complete tasks in the game. Your DM will ask you to roll based on one of the different skills that are in the game that are tied to these stats. And if you're starting off with a lower stat total, it's going to be harder for you to make the goal that your DM sets for you. So having these stats and understanding what you're good at and what you're bad at is important. Let's start talking about our first stat, which is strength. And strength represents your physical strength. Things like lifting objects or how much you can carry are determined based off your strength score. There are certain strength scores that or abilities that you're going to are tied directly to strength, like athletics or acrobatics. An example, let's say you need to lift a heavy object. You need to do that with a feat of great athleticism, so that would be strength. The next stat is dexterity. Dexterity determines your speed and nimbleness, as well as helps with ranged attacks. So dexterity is kind of like your ability to maneuver and also how quickly you can do that. Being able to throw objects, move gracefully, or being stealthy are all based off your dexterity. So the kinds of abilities that you would need dexterity for would be acrobatics, sleight of hand, which is like taking things kind of like that, like basic hand magic, and then stealth, so being able to hide from your enemies. Example, attempting to hurdle a stream, jump from platform to platform, or hide from somebody are all different things that you would use dexterity for. Constitution is your mental, spiritual, and physical fortitude. Your hit points and your resistance to poisons are determined by this stat. So Constitution is kind of like how well you resist, I guess for a lack of a better word, trauma in the game. Ability checks for Constitution. Although there are no direct skills related to Constitution, DMs have the discretion to use this stat for different things. For instance, Constitution could be used if you're investigating or perceiving yourself, or if you're trying to resist some kind of effect, the DM might talk to you about your Constitution score. Intelligence is how smart your character is. It can be equated with academic intelligence. So remembering information or knowing about a certain subject stems from intelligence. So this is kind of like being book smart. So has your character read up on the history of the world? Does your character know a lot about a certain topic? That's all an intelligence score. Ability checks for intelligence are things like Arcana, which is magic, history, right, lore, investigation, the ability to find information that you need, nature, and religion. So do you know about this god? Could you eat this berry? Those are all things that someone might ask an intelligence check for you on. Wisdom is knowing about the world around you and how perceptive to that world you are. You can be kind of thought of as street smart. So as intelligence means you're book smart, wisdom is kind of like what you've learned in the streets. So wisdom determines what you naturally notice around you. Things like animal handling, insight, medicine, perception, and survival. Things that your character would pick up, not necessarily from in a school, but maybe from living out in the world and adventuring. So can you see who or what you're looking for in this busy market? Did you notice that thing move or not? Can you ride this animal that you've ridden before, but not the specific one? That kind of stuff is wisdom. Finally, there's charisma, and that's really just how good you are at interacting with people. Persuading people is also part of charisma. So doing a performance or convincing another character of your goals are things that charisma is going to handle. Certain ability checks definitely line up with charisma, like deception. So trying to trick someone, intimidation, trying to scare someone, performing something, or persuasion, trying to argue in your favor. So, for example, if you need to lie, you might have to make a charisma check or a deception check to see if you lie successfully. Right? You're not like shaking or getting real sweaty or whatever, right? That's charisma. Another important stat, which isn't one of the 6 major ones, is armor class, which is also known as AC. Armor class determines if you're hit by enemy attacks. Enemies' attack rolls need to be higher than your AC to hit. So without an additional armor, your AC is 10 plus your dexterity modifier. Armor class is determined by your armor proficiency and what you wear. There are several types of armors and shields, plus magical items that can also help your AC. So there's lots of ways to boost it, right? Your dexterity modifier, going back to stats, is based off your stat score. So let's say your dexterity score is 16. That makes your modifier a +3. The reason that is because every 2 points above 10 is 1 extra modifier point. Every 2 points below 10 is a minus point. So if your dexterity was 8, you would have a -1 dexterity modifier. If your dexterity is 16, you get a +3. So armor class is based on all these different things, and armor proficiency is whether or not your character knows how to correctly use this armor. So for instance, if you're trying to walk around in full plate mail and you've never worn plate mail before, then chances are you're not wearing it right. And so it's not going to be as effective as if you are well versed in using plate mail. Initiative is your character's speed of action for combat. So anytime you're trying to fight someone or whatever, at the beginning of the battle, you're going to roll initiative. And so you're going to roll a d20, and then you're going to add your dexterity modifier. You do this to kind of create a turn, right? If you've ever played a game like Final Fantasy or games like that, like an RPG, right? You have a speed factor that determines who goes first. Initiative is D&D's speed factor. There are also abilities and feats that can increase your initiative, so it's not necessarily entirely tied to this roll and that dexterity modifier, but for the most part, that's what it is. The final one we're going to talk about in this episode is hit points. Hit points in D&D are determined by your Constitution modifier and your class's hit dice. Your starting hit point is your class's dice roll, 8 for a D8 or 12 for a D12, plus your Constitution modifier. The number of dice you roll is determined by your level in your class. So let's say you're a level 5 barbarian, you would end up rolling 5 d12 to determine your hit points at level 5. Hit dice also help you recover hit points in a short rest. So, for instance, if you're going around during your campaign and you take a break, maybe like in a pub, or you just take a breather or something, you can roll some of your hit dice, in this case if you're a barbarian, right, a d12, and you can recover some of your hit points during that short rest. Anyway, those are the major stats we're going to be talking about in this video. Stay tuned for next time to learn more about Dungeons & Dragons and how to play. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.